Welcome to ABC News. We're trying to frame. Wants a clear picture of what happened. Temperatures will be in the 40s on Friday.
Very warm welcome to Amishakil 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following are the latest news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian news channels and all other news agencies. So please, let's go to the news.
Tonight, breaking news, former President Joe Biden is diagnosed with cancer. Plus, the deadly crash of a Mexican naval ship slams into the Brooklyn Bridge, and the new severe weather threat with more than 50 million people at risk. We begin with the news just coming in about the former president diagnosed with prostate cancer with metastasis to the bone. His office is calling it a more aggressive form of the disease. What we're learning about possible treatments. Also tonight, the terrifying moment a tall ship slammed into the Brooklyn Bridge, killing 2 crew members. Others were left hanging from the mast. The ship, part of Mexico's Navy, was on a goodwill tour of multiple countries. New reporting on what may have caused it. The FBI says the man believed to be the suspect in the Palm Springs bombing was a 25-year-old who targeted a fertility clinic in what they're calling an intentional act of terrorism. What his writings reveal about a motive. The building was largely destroyed, but the embryos were saved. The death toll is rising from those violent storms that ripped through the South and Midwest. We speak with a family that was inside their home when their house thrown across the street. Plus, the new severe threat, many of those same areas could be hit again. New details in that shocking jailbreak in New Orleans. Police are now checking cameras, hoping to use facial recognition to find them. High-stakes phone calls. President Trump is planning to speak with Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky and seeking a peace deal for Ukraine. New trouble at America's airports. 2 Alaska Airlines planes clip wings on the tarmac ahead of a potential record-breaking travel rush. And Pope Leo appears to get emotional as he celebrates his inaugural Mass before 200,000 of the faithful.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York.
Tonight, breaking news. Former President Joe Biden diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. Also tonight, deadly disaster in New York. A Mexican tall ship strikes the Brooklyn Bridge. Sailors on the masts as they snapped.
They literally snapped off of them. I'm Shell Paul in New York with the latest on the investigation and how it happened.
Dangerous storms, at least 26 people killed across several states.
I'm Nicole Valdez in London, Kentucky, where neighborhoods and lives are shattered.
The latest on the new threat, 108 million in the bad weather bullseye. Act of terrorism.
Armand Gutierrez in Palm Springs, California, with the latest on the bombing outside a fertility clinic and new details about the suspect.
Gaza under siege.
I'm Deborah Paller in Tel Aviv as Israel escalates its war in Gaza tonight. Palestinians face hunger and despair.
Plus, the first American Pope celebrates his inaugural Mass. CBS News is there.
I'm Chris Livesay in Rome, where Pope Leo used the power of the pulpit to call for a just peace in Ukraine.
And later, our weekend journal. It's a thrill seeker's must-do. From the California Bridge to nowhere.
China sends nearly 300,000 students here to study annually. Some of those students reward your kindness by spying on you and stealing your technology, from drone footage of defense sites to surveillance of training exercises. These students are majoring in spying. Why do we allow it? Joining us at Florida Senator Ashley Moody, who introduced a bill to stop it. Welcome, Senator. Thank you for being with us. Tell us what your bill does, and should we cut off these visas or just do a better job of vetting the students?
Well, thank you for having me. Great to be with you, and thank you for shining a light on this. You know, quite frankly, I'm not convinced that all of my colleagues know that China, right now, by law, requires all of their nationals to cooperate with intelligence gathering and the CCP. It's a law. It's in black and white. So, you know, if we give visas to Chinese nationals to come here as students, and like you said, we're giving 300,000 a year to come into our universities and to come into this country, they are required by law, under penalty. Some of their families have even been hauled in by the CCP to gather intelligence and cooperate with the CCP. So why we are offering visas, why these are still being handed out, is insane at this time. I can't believe it, especially in light of a report that was released just last week but at Stanford that said it is happening right now. Some of these students came out and said, yes, they're hauling our families in. They're requiring us to cooperate. So spying is happening right here. It's by law in China, and we are still issuing visas. It just makes no sense. It's certainly short-sighted, and for a country that values national security, we need to do something about it.
All right, Senator, I'm sure some of our viewers are wondering who vets these putative students. Is it the school itself, law enforcement, the State Department, or is there any vetting done?
Right, so presumably there's vetting done for all of these visas, but you're seeing the problems we're having at some of our universities where we have imported so many students that hate this country, hate our national policy. Actually, some of their actions undermine our foreign policy interests. We've seen that time and time again, especially in the last few years. But even more concerning is the fact that you have these laws that got passed in China in 2015, 2017. Congress in 2019 warned that operations by the CCP were in full effect where they were recruiting students to come over here and spy. Now we have the recent report from last week that says they are indeed here and are spying. And so, having a visa, getting a student visa is not a right. It's certainly up to our State Department in this country who we allow to come into this country. And we used to take spying really seriously here in this country. If you'll
On this Sunday night, the inaugural Mass for the new Pope. The ceremonies and celebrations for Pope Leo at the Vatican. He's meeting with Prime Minister Carney as international politics unfold behind the scenes. Tragedy at the Brooklyn Bridge. What led to this ship's deadly collision with the New York landmark? Plus, business without borders. The ambitious plan to dismantle interprovincial trade barriers before Canada Day. And a do-or-die matchup in Toronto. Can the Leafs pull off a hockey miracle to break a decades-long playoff slump?
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Tens of thousands of well-wishers, including world leaders, European royalty, and dignitaries, packed St. Peter's Square today as Pope Leo XIV officially opened his pontificate. He toured the piazza in his Pope-mobile, a rite of passage ahead of his inaugural Mass. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. It is a momentous occasion that signals the beginning of a new era for the Catholic Church, guided by the first ever American Pope. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, a practicing Catholic, sat in the second row for the Mass. His Vatican visit is not only spiritual, but a strategic blend of faith and foreign affairs. Our Mackenzie Gray begins our coverage from Rome tonight.
Descending the steps into St. Peter's Square, Pope Leo XIV arriving at his inauguration to officially start his papacy.
Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Sunday's Mass over 2 hours long, a combination of music
Deus qui providentiae tue concilio
and prayer in front of a crowd of tens of thousands of faithful.
Breaking news tonight, former President Biden diagnosed with prostate cancer. We're learning tonight he's set to receive treatment for an aggressive form of the cancer that has already spread to his bones. What we know about his condition and the new reaction just coming in. The heart-stopping moment, a tall ship, look at that, crashes into the Brooklyn Bridge. The boat out of control, the masts crushed. Oh my gosh. You see here sailors hanging from the rigging, crowds on shore running for safety. And now, the push to understand how this could have happened. Terror in Palm Springs, the deadly bombing at a fertility clinic. What we're learning now about the suspect and why he may have done it. A devastating tornado outbreak, leaving a path of destruction in Missouri and Kentucky.
we had a community of people in this neighborhood, and
It's gone.
it's gone.
At least 28 people killed in the South and Midwest. Cars flipped, homes leveled, and now the new threat to Missouri tomorrow. President Trump taking on Walmart over tariffs. tariffs, telling them not to raise prices. But the Treasury Secretary says he told the company's CEO and what it all means for the price you pay. The Pope calling for peace in his first public mass as the Ukrainian president meets with Vice President Vance just ahead of talks between Russia's leader and President Trump. And there's good news tonight about the kindness of strangers and this mom's trip of a lifetime.
This is NBC Nightly News with Hallie Jackson.
Good evening. We are coming on the air with breaking news tonight. Former President...
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, consumer confidence hits a near-record low amid worries that President Trump's trade war could fuel inflation and trigger an economic downturn. Then the Trump administration dismisses hundreds of scientists helping to write a major report on climate change. And we look back at the catastrophic eruption of Mount St. Helens 45 years ago today.
It was the largest natural disaster in U.S. history. The eruption of Mount St. Helens was much more powerful than any hurricane, any explosion of a nuclear weapon. It was a devastating event.
Is Asia Now.
Hi, good afternoon. It is 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 a.m. in New Delhi, 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Yasmin Yonkers, and at this hour, Israel expands its ground offensive in Gaza, killing more than 100 people overnight. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though, is allowing some food into the besieged territory after a near 2-month-age blockade. U.S. President Donald Trump due for talks with Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin today as Moscow sets off its biggest drone attack since its full-scale invasion 3 years ago. And trade and upgraded ties take center stage as Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto meets Thai PM Paetongtarn Shinawatra in Bangkok for talks.
A few hundred France 24 correspondents around the world. Hello and a warm welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak. These are the headlines this hour. A pro-EU centrist wins Romania's presidential polls. Nicholas Gudan beating the far-right George Simion in a vote that saw the highest turnout in the country in 25 years. Meanwhile, first round of Poland's presidential polls saw the pro-EU candidate from the ruling centrists scrape ahead of the candidate from the Nationalist Law and Justice Party. A second round runoff there, also looking like it'll be a close fight over the country's direction and that EU question. Meanwhile, continuing its intense bombing, Israel increases its ground offensive in Gaza, with scores more Palestinians being killed over the weekend. Israel now saying it will, at some stage, allow basic supplies to enter after almost 3 months of a complete blockade.
Today, Israel to allow a basic amount of food aid into Gaza as it begins extensive ground operations in the war-torn Strip. Today, Israel to allow a basic amount of food aid into Gaza as it begins extensive ground operations in the war-torn Strip. Poisons expert details the location of local death cap mushrooms as Erin Patterson's trial enters its 4th week. New South Wales residents told to prepare for more heavy rain after flash flooding hits parts of the state.
Prolonged is a key word for this weather event because we're looking at rain through most of the day today, then again tomorrow, then again on Wednesday, potentially out towards Thursday.
And the Maroons named 3 debutantes in their squad for next week's State of Origin. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Catherine Robinson. Israel says it... Good morning, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. On today's programme, former US President Joe Biden is diagnosed with cancer. Plus, will today's UK-EU summit, the first since Brexit, mark a sea change in Britain's relationship with Europe? Discussing all of that and more is Monday, the 19th of May. Donald Trump is among those sending well wishes to Joe Biden after the former president is diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. Keir Starmer eyes a reset with the European Union today in a summit that could deliver deals on trade, security and the new youth mobility scheme between Britain and the continent. Sky News understands that Gary Lineker will leave the BBC this week following recent anti-Semitic accusations and a subsequent apology. Israel will allow what's described as a basic quantity of food into Gaza in order to avoid a starvation crisis while it ramps up its offensive. As the trial of Sean Diddy Combs continues this week, we sit down with one regular attendee of his famous industry parties.
A lot of people, within journalism, within media, and also within other industries that were afraid of his influence and also afraid of his temper.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. The former US President Joe Biden has prostate cancer. Mr. Biden's diagnosis shows a Gleason score of 9, meaning the disease is likely to grow quickly and has already spread to his bones.
Hello there, good morning. The EU dragging its heels down to the wire on a post-Brexit trade deal.
European officials said to be exploiting the Prime Minister's urgency to announce a deal today.
But with hours until the first UK-EU summit begins, is Labour about to cave in and give the EU exactly what it wants?
As former US President Joe Biden is diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer, we're finding out just how serious it could be. Last night, Ben Leo spoke to Republican insider Greg Swenson.
I do think, again, you have to look at this in the context of the greatest cover-up of all time.
Goodbye, Gary Lineker. A day of reckoning for the BBC as the House-paid star calls it quits after a series of controversies. We've got the views of journalist Nicole Lampert.
One thing that would be in his contract, because it's in everyone's contract, everybody that signs a contract who works for any company is about bringing the company into disrepute. And that is something that Gary has done. He's brought it into disrepute with his racist tweets.
It was a fairy tale moment. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle kiss on the steps of St George's Chapel.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle celebrate 7 years of marriage today. It's been 7 years, can you believe, since their fairy tale wedding at Windsor Castle.
And Chelsea Flower Show begins today, and what a nice day for it. The King and Queen prepare to take in the floral spectacle, but after one of the driest springs in record, will it live up to expectations? I think there'll be a few watering cans about the place.
As it's revealed, Labour voters are more likely to get matches on dating apps than Conservative or Reform supporters. We're debating how important it is to share the same political views as your partner.
And talking of matches, see what I did there?
Very
Not
good,
bad.
very good.
In sport this morning, Everton say goodbye to Goodison Park after 133 years, although the women's team will still play there. In golf, Scotty Scheffler has won the US PGA Championship as Rory McIlroy plays with a non-conforming driver, which I will explain later, and Germany's biggest statue wears Germany's biggest football shirt.
Hello. Well, after plenty of fine and dry weather, we have got some welcome showers in the forecast this week. I have all the details coming up.
It's just after 6 o'clock. A very good morning to you on this Monday morning. I'm Eamon Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Africa News. The new. Thousands of people believed to be illegals from Rwanda were expelled by the M23 from the key major town of Goma on Saturday. On Monday, the M23 spokesperson William Goma presented 181 individuals claiming they were Rwandan subjects who were illegally in Goma. Also present were thousands of women and children believed to be family members of the culprits. According to witnesses, they were carried in trucks and their documents issued by the Congolese authorities were burned to ashes in a stadium. The group claimed that the documents were bogus. The majority of the families are from the Karenga region, located in North Kivu, which had been under the control of the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, also known as FDLR. Both Kigali and M23 accused the Congo government of supporting the FDLR, which has also committed numerous atrocities in the region. According to some sources, most families lived in a displacement camp in Sake, a few kilometers from Goma. Some 360 people were repatriated on Saturday into Rwanda, according to Eugene Byun, a spokesperson for the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR. The United Nations has dismissed alternative proposals from the US and Israel on aid plan and supplies for the Gaza. Tom Fletcher, the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, urged on X for rapid, safe and unimpeded access to starving civilians in Gaza, calling for parties to stop wasting time on alternative aid distribution models. The US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, recently announced an alternative aid plan designed to serve around 1.2 million people, about 60% of Gaza's population, through 4 distribution centers inside the enclave. The UN has voiced firm opposition to the plan, citing concerns over its impartiality, neutrality and independence. Meanwhile, the US on Saturday, through its embassy in Tripoli, denied reports that it was working on a plan to relocate Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Libya. Initial reports had indicated that the US is working on a plan to permanently relocate as many as 1 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Libya. A Mexican Navy sailing ship on a global goodwill tour struck the Brooklyn Bridge in New York on Saturday, snapping its 3 masts, killing 2 crew members and leaving some sailors dangling from harnesses high in the air waiting for help. The New York City Mayor Eric Adams said the 142-year-old bridge was spared major damage, but at least 19 people aboard the ship needed medical treatment. 2 of the 4 members suffered serious injuries, later died.
Today, about approximately 20 hours, the ship was departing from Pier 17, where it was heading out to sea. The pilot, the captain that was maneuvering the ship, lost, power of the ship in the current. Mechanical function caused the ship to go right into the pillar of the bridge, hitting the mast of the ship, where there was a couple of sailors on top of it. These sailors were injured as a result of the mast striking the bridge.
It was unclear what caused the ship to veer off course. New York Police Department Special Operations Chief Wilson Annable said the ship had just left a Manhattan pier and was supposed to have been headed out to sea, not towards the bridge. The Pope's first inauguration since his election. Pope Leo XIV's inauguration took place Sunday at St. Peter's Square, symbolizing the beginning of his papal mission. Now expressed hope for negotiations to bring a just and lasting peace in Ukraine and offer prayers for the people of Gaza.
Nella gioia della fede e della comunione. Non possiamo
In the joy of faith and communion, we cannot forget our brothers and sisters who are suffering because of war.
a Gaza, i bambini, le famiglie, gli anziani.
In Gaza, the surviving children, families and elderly are reduced to starvation.
Nel Myanmar,
the hostilities have cut short innocent young lives.
giovani vite innocenti. La martoriata
Finally, war on Ukraine awaits negotiations for a just and lasting peace.
e duratura.
Leo made no mention of hostages taken by Hamas from southern Israel on October 7, as Francis usually did when praying for Gaza. The Pope delivered the Regina Caeli prayer for the altar site in front of St. Peter's Basilica at the end of the Eucharistic celebration, which marked the start of his pontificate before an estimated 200,000 pilgrims, presidents, patriarchs, and princes.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.